Furina de Fontaine is Focalors. She's an all-powerful Hydro Archon that sits on her throne, aiding to find the truth and deliver justice for her subjects. Not to mention egotistical, self-centered, and rightfully embodies what an Archon should be. I mean, it's obvious she's the Archon. Her personality, she's been around for 500 years, even her conviction towards showing off the truth allows her to embody the notion of being an Archon. Truly an amazing goddess, though she contains her flaws, and that is the extent of her character, or at least that's all she wants you to think. Furina is a character from Genshin Impact and is uncontestably the best main character the game has produced. Furina has lived for 500 years and is truly the most interesting character to analyze thus far. Now, I already talked about Furina before in an analysis short, but in this one I would like to go deeper into her character and into why I find her writing so intriguing. The way I'd like to tackle this is by discussing her writing through Act 1 all the way to Act 5 and point out the many intricate parts within her character that I can find. I will also be going over her story quest because though at first I didn't enjoy it much due to how she was treated, it does serve as a great conclusion to her character. And with that out the way, I feel it's time we begin with where her character is first introduced, aka her introduction within Act 1. Furina's introduction is far from normal compared to how most Archons are introduced. While Venti and Zhongli met the Traveler early on during their journey through Mondstadt and Liyue, neither of them directly added themselves as an Archon until later on. With Nahida, while we knew she was the Archon early on, she only really made herself known to us because of the Suseru Festival dream situation. And while we did immediately know A was the Electro Archon, she never really went out of her way to greet us when we first came to the nation. Heck, she was the only Archon who flat out tried to kill us. But what truly made Furina's introduction stand out was the fact that she greeted the Traveler almost immediately once they set foot in Fontaine and made it her goal to make it a spectacle. Through her initial dialogue, we can already see the seeds of her ego become planted as she seems to act more like a celebrity than your traditional god. We can see how she wears that title flamboyantly and with pride, which can show how much she's used to being praised without fail. This ego is also shown through her high levels of confidence when she immediately attempts to convict the Traveler of breaking the law, aka releasing a flying object, Paimon, within Fontaine city limits during the first 3 days of the month. Side note, that is a very crazy and oddly specific law that makes me laugh every time it's said. But even if this falls through, her confidence is shown through even more through her attempts to convict Lenny and Lynette of murder, as she is capable of bringing valid information, use deduction that would lead to them actually being the culprits of the case. Though she was also wrong this time, the confidence is still there, I promise. But we've seen before even an Archon slip up, so it doesn't mean anything in hindsight. She still remains egotistical, and is a firm Archon through and through. I mean, who else could believe she was anything but that?
Maybe this is fine. I just need to keep going, and everyone will be safe.
Sorry about that. I experienced some technical difficulties there. Anyways, let's go ahead and move on to Act 2. Now within Act 2, Furina doesn't have much of a presence until we get to the ending, so this part is going to be a bit short. Anyways, here's a bit of background for anyone unfamiliar with Fontaine Act 2. During this act, we are attempting to find a culprit to a serial disappearance case, and very surprisingly, Child has been put on trial as a suspect for said case. For those unfamiliar, you have two ways to defend yourself when it comes to being convicted into the court of Fontaine. You can either defend yourself within court, or go against the champion duelist and earn your innocence through a life or death duel. Now, Child has always been someone who enjoys sparring with others, as obviously seen throughout our time with him in Liyue, and the fact that he had already had a sparring session with Clorinde before this. And the reason I bring this up is because when Furina attempts to get a word in, Child challenges her too, and Furina flinches at this moment. But it's surprisingly the same thing she did when the Traveler was prepared to duel with her in Act 1. But hey, that's a valid reaction. Just like Nahida, maybe she just isn't an Archon used to combat. That doesn't necessarily mean she's scared, maybe she's just surprised that they would be so bold to challenge an Archon. Yeah, that's gotta be it, because there's no way the Hydra Archon would actually fear some mortal.
So interminable. So lonely. Just how much longer?
Jeez, why does that keep happening? Sorry. Let's just cut away to Act 3. Alright, so the funny thing about Act 3 is that it's practically the opposite of Act 2. This due to all of Furina's scenes within the act only taking place in the beginning, so here's some background for those unfamiliar with this act. At the beginning of the act, Arlecchino, one of the Fatui Harbingers, requests to have a diplomatic meeting with Furina over the false imprisonment of Child. Even though Neuvillette gives valid reasoning of how they should avoid such things until they've gathered enough information, Furina insists that they face the issue head on and take her up on the meeting instead. One of the lines that stood out particularly would be, even if the logic of the divine is not immediately apparent, its wisdom will only be revealed with time. What makes this stand out to me is that within religions like Christianity, this is the mindset the followers of God must be capable of adapting to. The ability to understand that even if we ourselves don't understand the reason for such things, it is only through accomplishing the tasks of this higher power that we receive enlightenment and blessings in the future. I bring this up because this line of dialogue helps in adding towards how Furina truly is the Hydra Archon and understands the traditional power it holds. Though, once again, she immediately turns childish when Neuvillette initially refused to show up to the meeting, but again, Archons like Vince here are childish too, so I doubt that means anything. Now moving on to the actual meeting, and I think it goes... well? Furina is pushed into a corner by Arlecchino almost immediately when she brings up Lenny Lynette being falsely accused, and once again brings up Child. Interesting thing is, throughout this tea party, something seems off. Furina can barely look Arlecchino in the eye during their exchanges, even relies more on Neuvillette to handle things for her. It's almost as if she's intimidated by her. But once again, Furina's an Archon, so such a thing would obviously be beneath her. Furina's the almighty Hydra Archon, and the god of justice after all. Even though she isn't perfect, nothing can ever take that part away from her.
All I can do is keep heart. I must maintain this act. It is the only way to save Fontaine. Please, mirror me. You have to succeed.
No, not again! If the mask cracks, then everything's over. Everything. I can't lose control again. Not again. Alright, let's begin to talk about Act 4. Now the first time we see Furina within this act would be the ending after the Traveler rushes to the Opera House to back up Furina, who's having another meeting with Arlecchino. Arlecchino uses this chance to dig into Furina, claiming how she isn't doing anything to stop the prophecy, even though she's the Archon. She digs into how Furina has shown no signs of developing even simple emergency response plans, or making tangible growth or developments within her supposed response towards the impending floods. Though what stands out to me is that Furina responds differently. Even the Traveler catches on as well. Her confidence and rejections towards Arlecchino's accusations towards her seems way more real and less animated than her past showings of confidence. Another interesting thing we discover from the talk is that someone seems to be storing indemnitium within the oratories and preparing for something. But I'll talk more about that later. Anyways, moving along to the end of the act, the Traveler would proceed to escort Arlecchino out the Opera House to have a private talk. And from the Traveler's talk with Arlecchino, we get an interesting plot development. At one point of time, when Arlecchino attempted to steal Furina's Gnosis, aka the source of her power as an Archon, she didn't have it. Now this isn't really a new concept, as someone like A gave her notes to Yaimiko a long time ago, so an Archon obviously doesn't need to be the one to hold on to it. The strange part is that along with her not holding a Gnosis, there was a sense of Furina not being an Archon at all, but being cursed instead. But no, that can't be the case. With how much Furina has shown us that she can be an Archon, she can't possibly just be human, right? I mean, it's not out of the question to believe she's been lying to us this whole time, as we've seen her act all prideful and sure of herself in front of her subjects, yet like when she's with Neuvillette, she turns childish and instantly dependent. Not to mention, before she fully went in on convicting Lenny Lynette of murder, she had a hint of hesitation, which could prove that even though she's supposed to be the god of justice, even she was unsure. But no way, we must believe in her, no doubt. She's been alive for 500 years, for heaven's sake. She might have flaws, but there's absolutely no way she's just hiding her true self behind a mask. No way, not her, not the amazing Furina de Fontaine, aka the goddess Focalors.
I want to tell someone, anyone, about this. But would that not destroy all I've done so far?
Guess there really is no hiding it, huh? Alright then, time to turn off the stage lights and truly draw back the curtain on who Furina de Fontaine truly is, underneath all of her many contradictions. Act 5 of Fontaine, Masquerade the Guilty, is Genshin Impact's magnum opus. Now, you have the right to disagree with me, and sure, maybe it's my Furina and Fontaine bias taking over, but you can't debate that it didn't hold a tremendous amount of emotional weight. Before we get into the trial and backstory, I want to thank everyone who's made it this far. I know it hasn't felt like an analysis because I've only been picking at surface level parts of her writing, but that was mainly for dramatic effect, as now we can truly break down every aspect of Furina. Now then, let's begin. Now, from Furina's perspective, Act 5 starts off with the primordial sea rising and killing many people within Poisson who couldn't evacuate in time, along with this inner turmoil of not being able to save her people unfolding right before her eyes. A crowd of protesters attempt to ambush her at the Opera House. Furina flees to Poisson, and in my eyes, this is the first time we truly are able to see Furina's suffering truly exposed to us, as she's apologizing to those who were lost and allowing herself to cry alone. But the worst part about this is, her suffering will have yet to end even after showing off these emotions. The traveler aids her in getting away from the protesters by hiding within a mental house. During this time, the traveler tries to push for Furina to just tell them her secret, as since the traveler isn't from Teyvat, it should be alright and shouldn't collide with the prophecy. Though Furina hesitates, and it's after this moment that a certain truth is revealed, and sadly, it isn't the one that Furina was holding on to.
I...
After they force her onto the stage, Furina is put on trial and agrees to defend herself in court, not because she's afraid of dueling Clorinde, but because she understands the distress she has caused her citizens, and the disappointment she feels towards herself is mutual. So, she resolves to display her conviction and confidence in front of them all, though within her mind she says, "This time, I will protect you," which can only be depicted as her vowing to truly put their minds at ease and protect them from ever distrusting her again. When the trial finally begins, it's revealed that she has been accused of being a fraud and never being the Hydra Archon in the first place. Furina obviously pleads not guilty, and it's even obvious that her citizens disagree with such an accusation as well. But then the Traveler begins to show off their evidence, and we begin to see Furina's mask crack. First, the Traveler points out how her long lifespan could be from a curse, as told to us before by Arlecchino, and the possibility is even backed up by Neuvillette. She is even further pushed into a corner when she has no idea why Chad was convicted by the Oratrice and her inability to show off her abilities as an Archon, though she just claims all her divine power goes into the Oratrice as indemnitium in order to power Fontaine. And this is where her mask begins to not only crack, but it completely begins to shatter. As her people begin to believe less and less in her, she becomes more and more desperate to have others believe in her, and you can hear it within her voice. And this all comes into a close when the primordial seawater is brought into the court. Furina requests to prove her divinity by putting her hand in the seawater, as she's a god, so she shouldn't dissolve in it. And when this display was shown off, Furina surprises everyone. To prove she's a god, she placed her hand within the primordial seawater, aka risking her life for the others to believe in her truth. Though, based on her reaction before and after, you can clearly see the stress and adrenaline she felt through the experience. And after it's revealed that she's still experiencing the symptoms of touching a much less concentrated amount of primordial seawater, the people of Fontaine begin to believe in her less and less. She grows more desperate for them to trust in her. You can see the stress within her voice as her mask crumbles beneath her, revealing the true and emotional Furina. And that's all ends with this being the first time she truly cried in front of the public. This is because if she wasn't already living in a sense of solitude before, now is when she truly felt completely and utterly alone. And with this, everything from the past acts makes sense. Within Act 1, you can obviously see the hesitation within Furina's voice when it comes to pressing charges against Lenny and Lynette, but through the support of her citizens, she pushed on anyways and attempted to win. This can be seen as a parallel to how she only continues to act egotistical in the open due to how the citizens believe an Archon of her stature should act. Not to mention her small monologue of staying up all night to gather evidence, and even her beginning to question if she might have falsely accused Lenny and Lynette, along with showing feelings of guiltiness is a way to further humanize her. And then within Act 1, 2, and 3, it can be completely plausible that she truly felt intimidated by the likes of Child and Arlecchino. Then within Act 4, Furina's push for Arlecchino to take back her accusations makes sense, because this would mean that she has been suffering and fighting more than anyone within Fontaine. And it's completely reasonable to be against someone trying to write off your contributions as negligence. But anyways, I feel it's time we go deeper and discover how Furina even got this way. We can understand Furina's backstory through the Traveler as he's able to connect to her inner psyche through coming into contact with her tear, and we even get to understand it from Focalor's point of view through the eyes of Neuvillette, who connected to her as the Oratrice allowed him to. For the sake of this, I will start with Focalor's, but I am going to make it short since this is a Furina analysis video. So, the people of Fontaine were originally Oceanids who were fated to always live within the ocean. That is until Focalor's predecessor, Egeria, granted them their wish to become human and transformed them to the disdain of the heavenly principles. And that is also how the prophecy came into fruition. Focalor was put into a position where she had to figure out a way to clean up Egeria's mess, and after many years, she came up with her master plan to fool the heavenly principles and save the people of Fontaine. Focalor would split herself into two beings. One side would contain her divinity and reside within the Oratrice, and her human side, aka Furina, would play the leading role as the false Hydro Archon and be cursed with immortality for however long the divinity side would continue to live. With this full out on display, we can easily get an idea of the torture Furina's been forced to endure for 500 years. But instead of imagining, why not just see it from her point of view? Now, something to point out would be the initial display of Furina's inner psyche. You can tell that Furina has been so closed off from anyone else that even in her own mind, she feels the spotlight is always on her, and she must not allow her performance to falter. This is why us turning off the spotlights is such well done symbolism, because it shows us finally taking the stress off Furina's shoulders and taking down her different defense mechanisms, aka the robots that attempt to stop us. Now, in the beginning of her play of Solitude, Furina is greeted by Focalors within a mirror who attempts to request her aid to save Fontaine from the impending prophecy. And it's even shown that even though Furina knew that she would need to undergo intense suffering for this to work, she would willingly give up her happiness for the people of Fontaine, which shows her true compassion and ideology of what justice is to her. Through the years, she is forced to adapt to playing the role of Hydro Archon, having to mask her true intentions and nature behind a facade to avoid suspicion. She's even shown to go under greater stress here, because not only does she not understand the scope of Focalor's plan, she doesn't even have the luxury of knowing when this hell tailor-made for her will cease to exist. And you can even come back to a past line to see an interesting parallel. Now, do you remember how I originally said the line, "This time I will protect you," only had one meaning? Well, at that point, you can see that I was lying, and that there truly is another after learning her backstory. As Furina feels like she must forever continue to keep up the facade of Hydro Archon to protect Fontaine from the prophecy, she realizes that to protect her people, the only thing she can do is keep up her play of Solitude. She wants to protect the people of Fontaine from the truth, which adds to my original title for her being the walking contradiction, as she is now a goddess of justice who secretly hides the truth from the public. Another major part within her play of Solitude would be the inner monologues we get from her. Based off how the counter exponentially went up towards the end of her play, you can presume that she would get more used to playing the role, and the worst part about it is that she is. When Furina is meeting with the descendant of another citizen she met hundreds of years ago, she begins to cry. And what makes this scene so powerful is that she doesn't even realize it until it's brought up. Furina comes up with an excuse because she feels as if showing any form of emotions like sadness would make her look suspicious. The scene of Furina crying on her bed, the scene depicting her inner monologue while speaking with the Traveler, these scenes brilliantly showcase how her suffering has twisted and warped her own ideology. Furina's form of justice was to take on the burden and suffering of Fontaine so her citizens could survive, and her suffering has done nothing but harden this sense of justice, even if it's tearing her mental state apart. She's become emotionally isolated, leading to her refusal to confide within the Traveler, because she's always been alone and believes she always should be. She considers such a thing being selfish, showing how her fear of ruining what she worked so hard for completely outweighs her hope to finally be able to have a break within her solitude and truly be set free from this twisted fate she was dealt. And in my eyes, her story within Act 5 ends in a truly majestic way. To truly save the people of Fontaine, Focalors would have to sacrifice herself for a power to transfer back to Neuvillette, who could forgive the people of Fontaine for their sins and save them from the flood. That's why she was charging the Oratrice with Indemnitium, because that would create the weapon that would execute herself and free Furina from her curse. And after a beautiful sync dance between them both, they can accomplish their goals.
The hour of my execution is almost here. For the sinner, the curtain call has come. I know I may not sound it, but faced with death, I find myself a little afraid. Perhaps this is one thing both gods and humans have in common. Farewell, Neuvillette. I hope you've enjoyed the part you played these 500 years.
Focalors is able to apologize to Furina and save the people of Fontaine, and Furina is able to finally be set free from her curse and able to leave the spotlight. Or at least until her story quest happen. Now then, I believe Furina's story quest not only holds the place of her highest character peak, but also serves as a powerful conclusion to her character as a whole. Now, some background is that the Traveler is given a commission to find an extra actor for a third troupe who really needs one. Now then, we first see her after Palma rudely comments on her smaller living arrangements as if she isn't an intolerable piece of Apologies, my lawyers have advised me not to finish my little rant about emergency food. Anyways, when it comes to Furina, you can already see a shift and change of personality within her Archon side and this new Furina. Through the tone of her voice, it's obvious she's way more mellowed out and began to start appreciating the simpler things in life, like her cute new macaroni obsession. But one of her changes that really stands out would be her vow to never return to the stage again. Now this is the most important part because it's the culmination of what all her suffering has led up to. It's almost like a trauma response if anything. And that was one of the reasons I originally didn't like this story quest, because what ends up happening is her breaking her vow due to unplanned circumstance. But after reanalyzing, I began to look at it and the story quest as a whole in a different light. Though throughout the quest I originally would be ticked off that the people of Poisson, for example, were still on edge around Furina, I realized that it's completely possible the traveling Nouvellette just didn't reveal her past to the public, which would make sense in hindsight as doing so may alert the Heavenly Principles. And while originally I completely hated how Furina was stuck being the one to apologize to so many people, it fits in line with her character as she blames herself for not being able to truly put them at ease. And finally, the finale, aka her highest character peak, shines within her performance of La Vagoulette. While originally I said how I hated the thought of Furina immediately breaking her vow to not act, you can make a case that it's only through being pushed to act once more within this play that leads to her development truly coming to a perfect finish. Furina plays the role of the little Oceanid within the play that completely parallels her own reality, and it's only when she is fully prepared to come to terms with herself and push past the fear of acting once more that she receives her vision from Nouvellette himself. And it's within her vision voice line that perfectly embodies what she was feeling within that very moment and the meaning of her character as a whole.
The moment I stood on stage and faced the audience again, that I realized the anxiety in my heart had dissipated. The reason I can now stand before the crowd's watchful gaze is perhaps because I have finally started to act as myself.
Through this analysis, I hope you can at least understand Furina's character a little bit better. She's a walking contradiction forced to suffer due to her ideology of justice and the destiny she was dealt. To save the people of Fontaine, she accepted the curse and locked away her true self for 500 years and refused to confide in anyone, all because she believed the utmost safety of her citizens completely outweighed her own mental health and suffering, yet most of her subjects wouldn't even know it. The people of Poisson, she is a false Archon who didn't act in the face of the prophecy. To the outside world and her subjects, she is a celebrity who shined on the stage like a true goddess. But to me at least, she is a hero and the character that truly made me understand that it is only through acting as herself that you can truly find the ability to smile and enjoy the moment. And that is the character of Furina de Fontaine, the false Archon, and my second favorite character within all of fiction. I really hope you enjoyed this analysis video. I hope to do more soon, and that's all. See ya.